Hey, this is Mike Byrnes with another episode of Business Bests. Super excited to be here. I cannot wait to talk to you about this simple topic, but it makes a lot of sense for business people, but even individuals too. And it's a lot about leadership by example. I was just published in CEO magazine, and I thought this advice would be timely to share. One of the things that I see is that just a lot of CEOs or leader types of people aren't visible enough. And how do you become more visible? Obviously, if you're up in the ivory tower and people can't see you, that is a big issue. Like there's a disconnect and they feel distant from you. The bigger the company, the more of a challenge it is to be in front of people. Like obviously a smaller business, you can walk around the office and spend time and talk with people. That gets to be more of a challenge. So for the bigger audiences, whether that's associates or whatever it might look like, you have to have a plan and you have to have a communication strategy. So first, with all sizes, be out there, be authentic, show who you are, align it with culture and the mission and everything we've talked about before, but lead by example. And one of the things that obviously isn't an obvious one is turning on the lights, being there and being visible that you're working hard and determined to make the business successful. One of the ideas you might want to think about is being flawsome. Flawsome is being awesome because you have flaws, and I think that is an amazing way to make a connection with human beings. We want to be connected, and that's how we'll follow somebody if we feel like there's that human connection. And nobody's perfect, right? So being able to admit that and show that, obviously you don't want to go too far and show your flaw that you're alcoholic or something, really bad. But you want to, be authentic and show that you make mistakes and learn from it and try to always be striving to be better. That can be a really great role model. If you're one of those people that is striving to always succeed and you're not going to always hit the ball out of the park, like I said, you can really encourage people to do the same and keep moving forward. So that larger company, how do you, work the floor kind of thing when the floor might be multiple buildings or multiple cities or whatever it might be. So if you were going to be a leader with 10 people, how would you translate that to 100 people, and how would you translate to 1,000 and so on? I'm not sure of the size that you're dealing with, but use some best practices, right? So obviously there's a lot of great electronic technologies like this. Doing a recording is something that can be that one-way communication. Doing some kind of like town hall kind of webinar format, Q&A, giving your associates a chance to hear you speak. It can be an expense, but bringing people in for a company-wide event can be a wonderful way to express your beliefs, your strategy. But one of the other things too is your enthusiasm and your excitement. Can be contagious. And if you can actually get that across in person, that's wonderful. Obviously using those other types of tools to communicate, even your public display, your brand and how you communicate to the outside world. A lot of times your associates are going to digest that information too. And so that can be a powerful way to lead by example too. So last tip on that is just no matter what the size of the company, leadership by example is probably one of the best leadership tools that you have. And it ties in with a whole bunch of other best practices with leadership. So make sure that you're trying to figure out what am I doing as a leader that I want to display so that other people follow. And again, go back to your core values. Go back to your business initiatives, go back to the mission statement, all that stuff, and to say, hey, how am I leading by example in every one of these different areas? And then if you need help, get an outside consultant, get a senior associate, whoever it might be in your organization to give you some advice and actually just give you like a fair review of what you're doing and give you a nice critique and help you build to be better. One of the other things to be a great leader is to be a great public speaker. And so I had written an article a long time ago for Financial Advisor magazine with 10 best practices to be a great presenter. I've presented so many times and I've been to so many conferences. I've kind of seen the do's and don'ts of what you should do and what you shouldn't do. So some of these tips will hopefully be helpful. Number one is know your audience. So on the marketing and sales side, I've talked about know your target market, know your clients better than anyone else. Well, same thing as a speaker is know your audience better than anyone else. I've seen speakers come in and go from industry to industry and industry, and then they say something that doesn't resonate with the industry that they're speaking to, and they've lost the audience. They kind of tune them out, like they don't care anymore once there's that disconnect. So know your audience. One of the things speakers can have a flaw with is that they become overly confident. They become these experts, again, these ivory towers, and they're kind of pushing whatever they believe down. But if you're not making that connection, putting yourself in their shoes or asking the question, what's in it for them, the presentation might completely fail before it even gets out of the gates. So number one is really know your audience. And I can't say that enough. And there's some steps later on that will actually tie into knowing your audience, and there'll be some better ways to do that research and connect. Number two is to be careful about overusing facts. Everyone likes a pie chart or a line graph or whatever to display that, but they're never going to go back and remember that it was 35% instead of 33 or whatever it might be. Like they'll get the trend line maybe. So what is that thing that they remember? I learned this a long time ago. I believe it was from advertising and learning marketing way back, is that facts tell, but stories sell. And I can't tell you enough, like the people that I've thought were the best speakers, and that could be someone that's speaking in front of thousands of people, or even some people have audiences that are 1 million plus people, or it could be someone in a room of 10 different people, and they could be just owning the room, like the room really understands them and connects with them. Those people always kind of have a way of telling a story that gets their point across. And when you ask someone later on, what do you remember from that presentation, the story is usually the thing that makes the connection. So what I would recommend is pay attention to all the speakers that you follow, whether it's a business speaker or religious leader or educator or whoever it might be. Pay attention to the stories they tell and how they resonate with people. Even at the holidays, the people that, the best presenters, they kind of seem like they're just naturally always really good at talking with people, and they make a great connection at a party or at a holiday dinner or whatever. They're usually telling some stories from their past, and they make the connection. So if this is something that you want to be a presenter, I would recommend that you kind of spend some time thinking about how could you get that story across without just using the facts. Numbers are important. They kind of solidify that message that you're trying to get across. So yes, I wouldn't just eliminate that from a presentation if it's needed, but be very careful that that's not the thing they're going to remember years from now. They're going to remember that story. Please, please, please avoid the death by PowerPoint. There are so many people that will use visuals, and I believe they're important, but they put something up there that is all text, whether it's paragraph format or they have 10 bullet points. That is a killer. We, as humans, aren't so great at multitasking. I try to think I can, but if I start reading something, am I really listening? And I'll be trying to listen, but if the person was reading the bullet points, it would reinforce it, but nobody wants to hear a presentation being read, right? I once saw a speaker start with 3 paragraphs that she completely read, didn't take her head up from the podium, just had her head like this, and then waited 2 minutes and said, what were those 3 points that I made after she read 3 paragraphs? And not one person out of 100 people could remember what those 3 points were because they disconnected right out of the gates. And then she was this big, lively and fun and bubbly presenter. But she kind of showed that death by PowerPoint or reading or not like talking to the audience, making eye contact, making the connections, that can be devastating to a presentation. Webinars maybe are a time where you can get away with using more words. but I would be cautious. As a presenter, I can tell you visuals are really important. And one of the keys that I would say is figuring out how to really use the title and make that gripping and be able to get that point across. To me, what I figured out was the reason I would have wanted 10 bullet points was because I couldn't remember what I was talking about. So one of the things, obviously we'll talk about practice in a second and being prepared, but the thing about Death by PowerPoint is you don't have to have all the content on one slide. So what I learned is that I use a great heading and then just a picture. And for me, that picture was going to be something powerful that connected with whatever point I was trying to make. But as a speaker behind the scenes, that's that bullet point that I'm not reading the text. I'm just looking at that picture, and that's the trigger to talk about something for a minute or two. So for me, I try to go through like a slide a minute, where some people will be stuck on the same slide for 10 minutes to 30 minutes. And oh my goodness, you've lost the audience, right? Like, why even put the visual up? Take it down so that they can focus on the speaker. Be careful how you use presentations, because speakers can lose the audience, right? They can start to just look at the visuals and forget that a human being is talking about something. But I do really believe we're visual learners, and so if you can put something up, make sure that you make sure it's really powerful. AI now is allowing you to create images. I know there's some ethical issues there, like you should be able to buy images, photography or drawings or cartoons or infographics or whatever it was. So that industry is kind of hurting because of AI, because now you can type something in and say, hey, I'm looking for this type of visual. Can you help me create it? And AI is getting better and better and better at it. So no excuse not to have fantastic images in your presentation that will get that point across. One of the other things that I would say is videos can be really powerful. That's where you're going to be, off to the sidelines and maybe talking over it just a little bit. I've had issues with videos in the past, so I really don't use them as a presenter because you're in the basement of this big conference center and the Wi-Fi is not working, or too many people are on it and it's overloaded, and all of a sudden your video is not playing, and now you look like you were unprepared or you don't know what you're doing. So if you can talk people through the images, it's safer than having videos not play properly. But that also goes to the preparation and being on site early and having the room to yourself so you can test this stuff to make sure it works. I hope that's helpful on a tip on how to be using PowerPoint in a better way. The next tip really starts to get into the fear of presenting. And the tip before, I guess, could help with that too. But I actually had a priest once tell me that, and I never looked this up to see if it's true, but I'm sure it is, that the number one fear in the United States is public speaking. And, I would think it would be, I'm in New England, like great white sharks. Like if I get in the water too deep in the ocean, I hear dun-dun-dun-dun-dun-dun, or lightning storms, or hurricanes, or natural disasters, or fear of the dark, or whatever, jumping out of a plane. It would think that all those have a chance to be number one, but I was told that public speaking is that thing that people can't stand. So how do you kind of get over that? One is knowing the content, obviously better than anyone else. You're creating the content. That's the key. If you have someone else create the content for you, it gets a little touch and go, right? So they start to have this visual or image of the message that's trying to be conveyed, and they put the thoughts together, and then they create something and then deliver to you, and then they're like, oh, here, go present on it. If you're not involved in the creation of it, it can be a disconnect, right? And so then you can be a little bit nervous, like, oh man, what's that next slide that's going to come up, etc. Knowing the content is another thing. Like if you're faking it and you got some experts in the room that are watching you, you're at risk of, like the just looking at what's the comment? The emperor has no clothes. Like you just have this risk of looking foolish if you really don't know the content, and that starts to create that fear, public speaking wise. So know the content better than anyone else. Even knowing like what the next slide is going to be. There are tools if you're really presenting in front of a big audience that will have screens. I don't know if you've ever done a big keynote. Sometimes they'll have the screen that you're on down by your feet, and then you'll have two other screens, the past slide and the future slide, that no one else can see. So you can just kind of get a glimpse of what's coming next. And then you can work on your transitions. That can be pretty helpful, but you don't want to be disengaging with the audience and not making eye contact and looking down at that. It's just kind of one of those things that you hopefully see out of the corner of your eye, use your peripheral vision. But that also goes with knowing the content. You should know what's next. And that leads to the next tip, which is preparation. I'm a big believer of giving a presentation because giving a presentation to just yourself, maybe sit in front of a mirror. People don't like doing this, and they're like, I'm just going to wing it. Well, I guarantee the second time you give something is almost always better than the first time, unless it comes around with humor, like you might actually authentically just have a funny joke. But I'll even say with humor, I remember Seinfeld telling, he did a TV interview once, and he said he would rewrite a joke, I think like 30 times, and practice it over and over and over just to see, you know, if I change this word, or if I flip-flop these parts of the sentence, or if I bring in this or that. And he just was so good at his craft, but it was all about practice, and that presentation wasn't just something that he just gave. And then again, like a comedian would go out and do like some pilots of the actual comedy skits or acts, or you know, the whole performance, and get a read of how the audience interacted, what they liked, what they didn't like. If you have the time, having a mini focus groups, you know, listen to what you're talking about. At least just one person that you really value their opinion, that they know the audience really well too. That can make a pretty good audience of one, and that can give you that important feedback to make tweaks. There are some people that just want to present what they want to present, and they don't care what that person thinks. So be careful if you're going to have somebody listen to an hour-long presentation. More or less, could be more or less, but you know, they're investing their time. So make sure you're listening to their feedback, because they're not going to want to do it again if you don't want to take some of their positive criticism and make your presentation better. One of the hardest critics can be your own self, and I'm a big believer too of recording yourself before you have a big keynote presentation. Look how you work the room. Do you walk the stage? Do you make eye contact? How long do you hold the eye contact? How do you use your hands? Are they distracting, or are they actually you know, adding value to what you're talking about? There are all kinds of things that you can pick up from the way that you present by watching yourself, even your volume, and that can be really important. There's times where you want to get a little louder to get your point across, make it more of an explanation point, like you're going to like really make it more of a way that you're really going to pound home your message, and that's where you want to not just be monotone. And there are times where you want to have breaks, right? You like slow down your presentation, just a little slower, and there's a buildup, and then boom, you're like right where you're at the pinnacle of your presentation, the best advice you're giving, the point that you really want to drive home, and that's the part where you're the most engaged, and that's where you kind of draw your audience in. So back to presenting, if you are watching yourself or other really talented people that can give you good feedback about how to be a presenter, if they're watching you and taking notes, that can be a really valuable piece of this whole process. One cautious piece of that is do not over-rehearse. There are people that get up on stage in front of large audiences that are just so scripted, and it feels like they're a robot, like it doesn't feel authentic. So if have that happy balance where a little bit maybe goes off script without you getting in trouble with a senior leader or compliance or the branding expert or whoever, but sometimes that's okay. You know, I think you can learn from politicians. There's some that are good at it, some that are bad at it, but go look at like all the best business speakers out there. Go look at past political leaders, Martin Luther King Jr. or Churchill or whoever. And they had different messages that you're going to be probably conveying, but you can see how they became passionate about what they did and how they got their message across. And just every time you're seeing somebody that is up on stage or behind a podium or behind a microphone, whatever it is, kind of take note. What did you like about it? What did you not like about it? And then try to create a list of those things that you want to emulate. The next tip is avoiding fillers. There are times where they pop up, the ums, the I don't knows, the so's, there's so many different things that you can start to fill. Part of that is your thinking, and sometimes you're thinking about what the next word is, and could be one of the fillers too. So you have to be careful, because once you start to say them, it's hard to get them out of that presentation. If something rattles you, just make sure that you take a couple deep breaths, settle yourself down, and then become confident again in yourself. Once you kind of lose that confidence is when you start to add those fillers. There are people that use fillers all the time in their real life. If you listen to a conversation with them on the phone, or they're talking with their kids or whatever. For example, when my daughter was 13, she would come home and the word like was in between every phrase. Like. And my son and I would tease her, be like, hey, try to say that again without using the word like. And she'd get so frustrated because she couldn't stop it. It's not till you become aware of it that you notice that you put these fillers in. But then you have to get them out of your life. I mean, get them out of everything that you do when it comes to communicating. Because if you do it in your at-home world with your friends and your family, even if you do it in your business day to day, and then think you're going to go up and speak and not have those fillers in your repertoire, you're crazy. Like, that's just part of the way that you communicate. And so if you're trying to get rid of those, you have to work on it. If you have a problem, there are editing tips that you can do. There's software out there that will actually, once you have the recording, strip out all the fillers, or it'll show you all of them, and then you can go through one by one and take them out. But it becomes a little choppy, and so you don't want to have to use that last resort if it is a recorded presentation. But that is a solution if you're looking for it. If you use those fillers, it just takes away your credibility. And I apologize if I have been using these today. Sometimes I watch my videos and I hate the way I sound and look. But I definitely hate when I start to get in this routine of using fillers, and sometimes I don't even notice that I do it. So back to the knowing the content, that helps you not have to think about what the next word is. You just kind of just naturally comes to you, and when it naturally comes to you, you don't have to use the filler to pause to a lot of speakers don't want to have that quiet moment before they say the next word. I would caution you that if you don't have those quiet times, then people can't digest things. Like they almost need a little bit of quiet time. So if you always are filling something in there, that you're not helping the audience digest your content. There's a whole bunch that you can do to get rid of fillers, but step one is just know that you have them and then start to work on eliminating them. One of the best tips that you can have as a speaker is to be engaging. There are too many people that just want to kind of report everything they know, and it gets kind of sad. If you're in front of 1,000 people, that's 1,000 hours that are being donated to listen to you. Let's just say it's 100 people. That's a lot of hours that are dedicated to you. So it's not just that you deliver the right content, but it's how you deliver it. There was a term called infotainment years ago when you're creating like YouTube videos. I always thought try to make them engaging and exciting and entertaining, but also deliver that info that you want to deliver. So same thing with a presentation. How do you have people just excited that they're sitting in there and that they're totally engaged in the next word that you're going to say? Some of the things I've talked about already, like have a great story that gets your point across, but just how you carry yourself, your enthusiasm, your excitement, how you pace yourself, all that. Be engaging. It's something that doesn't come naturally to some people. If you're super introverted, you might not have this ability naturally, so it might be something you have to work on. You think of someone that goes and, let's say 2 actors go for a role, and one person does like reading the role, and they're like, they're not going to get the part, right? So you're thinking about how do you get up on stage and entertain people, even though it might be a business topic that you're talking about. There's not enough speakers that are pushing themselves in this category, and I would work with someone that's really engaging. And I mentioned humor too. Humor can blow up and go the wrong way, but if you use humor the right way, it can be very engaging, right? You know, people love to laugh, and you can they can love your presentation if they laugh, even though the content wasn't great. So make sure that you figure out how to be engaging, whether it's humor. Sometimes you can just be engaging by getting someone to be really sad and they have some other emotional connection. There are a whole bunch of ways to be engaging, but I would say most speakers make that an afterthought. Some have the natural ability, and that's why they just kind of luckily become good presenters. If you don't have that natural ability, you got to work on it. Related to being engaging is just not too slow. I have seen some speakers that are really slow and you hang on their next word and they're still engaging. But there are people that just don't get enough content out, right? And so you have that hour you've dedicated to sit there. Could you cram in an hour and a half's worth of content? And if so, would you blow their mind away? As a consultant like me, if I'm speaking, I want people to hire me for my consulting business. So I actually try to do the opposite of what some other people do. Some people try to go slow and kind of give a sales pitch. For me, I go demonstrate everything I know, and then people are like, wow, I want to hire that person because they just blew my mind. Like I couldn't even keep up taking notes. Know your audience. Again, we started with that. If you're talking with an older generation, maybe they are a little bit slower. I'm not trying to be stereotypical here, but if you were talking with a 90-year-old widow, you would talk at a different pace than if you talked with a 25-year-old executive, if that exists, right? So know who you're talking to, know how complicated and sophisticated the content is too. This is where repetition might be helpful. So you could talk through something really fast, but if it's something that they need to digest, go back and kind of repeat it or talk about it again, and you'll make a better connection. But imagine the content that you're sharing. Could you get to the point a little faster and get it across? I think that would be really helpful if you could do that. I talked about this a little bit, but your tone is super important. This is where you can watch yourself and get a feel for what your tone is. Again, some people have a natural bubbly tone or enthusiastic and excited tone. Some people are monotone and they normally don't do super well at speaking. Stephen Wright is a comedian. I always thought he was the one person that was like so monotone, but he got you to laugh. So it's not saying that everyone that is monotone is going to be a terrible public speaker, but you have to think about what your tone is, what you're trying to convey, how you're trying to connect with the audience, and then make sure you deliver on it. One interesting thing in this new digital world is encourage digital engagement. And so if you got people to tweet or send a message on whatever social network they're using, they're engaging, and now your audience is expanding, as long as that's okay if it can be a public message. Encourage that. Use tools like hashtags or whatever it might be to have people in the audience. You're speaking to 1,000 people, they can actually interact with each other too. Or you're at a conference and you're at a breakout session and you're only speaking to 100 people, but there's 2,000 people at the conference. Use that hashtag that's related to the conference, and then other people can kind of pick up on what is being shared in your session and get a feel for what they used. The other thing too is just make sure you use the technology in recording everything and packaging it up, because if your presentation has a long shelf life, it's just a great way to build up your charisma and your knowledge and your expertise and all that stuff, and you become this kind of a bigger figure if they can go watch other videos about you. Lastly, I would say is just research your audience. So when you're practicing, it's nice to sit across some people and they give you feedback. But a lot of speakers just kind of go and they think that they hit the ball out of the park. I would not be thin-skinned, and I would ask for feedback. What did you like? What can I improve? Those are two questions you could have. One on a scale of 1 to 10, how did I do? That type of stuff. But you might want to also ask things like, what was the one key takeaway that you remember? Or what was the one thing that you will go implement when you go back to the office? And just see if any of the stuff made a great connection. I am Mike Byrnes. I hope that these tips to be a better presenter have been helpful. Thank you very much for tuning in, and I look forward to hopefully increasing your success. Thanks a lot.